Alright, so begins life, volume 3. Sorry, yeah, 2 wasn't too popular, but not, at least not too much comment or anything, which is okay. Because I'll just move on. Alright, so let's get to the biology stuff, where we came from, and what it means, what the implication is about this whole psychology, this whole experience we call being alive. Alright, so look, the basics are, yeah, we were invented by chemistry. Alright, there was, the whole universe expanded, did this whole thing, stars exploded, heavy metals created, elements, compounds, so there's a lot of chemistry on Earth. The chemistry, kept banging into each other, kept souping around, and eventually, a membrane and a DNA molecule found a way to create what was the first reproducing little machine. And so it started reproducing. And once that game started, there was no way to stop it. So there was a connection between this DNA and the mechanism of reproduction. And so the DNA became a blueprint for changes and evolution and the whole thing. So the machine became much more sophisticated over 4 billion years of evolution. And so eventually we got all these animals, mammals, they grow brains. The whole consciousness thing happened to make animals more adaptive. It wasn't for that purpose, obviously, it just happened. It was an advantage for an animal to sense good and bad, to be able to put things in categories. And so a bad sensation and a good sensation and something they could remember gave them an advantage in the environment. Obviously, if you could remember good and bad experiences, you're obviously going to be better at navigating your environment, but you're going to avoid making the same mistake twice or 3 times or 15 times. And so from there it's just obvious how it would evolve a greater and greater capacity, because it would be an advantage in the struggle for life to being able to be very articulate in the way you navigated the environment, to take advantage of to take advantage of it in a very efficient and optimal manner. So we 70,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, something happened inside the human brain that made us capable of retaining a large vocabulary, not just a language of 10 words, but something a little deeper than that, a little more extensive than that, which had the consequence of allowing us to create concepts and store symbolic representations, more elaborate ones inside our heads. And I would theorize that it was a simple change, that some mechanism in the brain, like the difference between, say, in humans now, they have what's called idiot savants, which are, people consider them retarded, but obviously their brain is pretty functional. It's just that its priorities are different than the normal human. So its consciousness is bent in a certain direction, a focus. The focus is different. And they're capable of incredible things in terms of, because of that specialization, because of devoting the brain to those things. And so you can sort of see that too in other great apes. They have capacities that exceed our own in terms of mimicking and doing different kinds of things. So their consciousness, I would speculate, is just differently focused. It's not that they are without potential that we have theoretically. It is that the wiring is a little different, the hardware is different, and I would argue that it might perhaps be possible to do some simple surgical change that would enable a chimpanzee or a gorilla, for example, to use more brain capacity on vocabulary and perhaps be able to speak, or at least do it with some mechanism to communicate with a language by reprioritizing their brains. But anyway, that's a whole different subject. But the point is, I think the point that we have to recognize is that whatever it was, 70,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 years ago, whenever it is we acquired a human brain, a brain that if you took that child from that era and brought into this world, it would be just as capable as us of acquiring a language and being intelligent and communicating and doing all that stuff. Yet people with this brain 200,000 years ago were idiots. I mean, they were little more than baboons. I mean, they were really, really stupid. No, not much, just a little bit better than an ape. And that's the catch here, is that whatever the change was, it was enough of a change to give us an environmental advantage that made us capable of succeeding, but it also opened a door. It opened another greater capacity, which was our capacity to acquire this fully functional language, to store it on paper and on other things, wood, and carve it into the rock, and gave us the capacity to learn over time, to develop a culture and a history, a knowledge base, and to take that knowledge base into each generation and move it forward. And that's how we built our this thing we call civilization, and this thing we feel proud of as having this greater intelligence, when what we really have is a greater knowledge base. We are informed, we are enlightened, we're knowledgeable, and that's the only difference between us and them, is that knowledge base. And so that kind of should give you a little perspective. I mean, really, it's the only distinction between you and an animal is the fact that you can know better, okay? And you only know better because for 10 or 15 or 20,000 years, human beings did a lot of experiments and learned things about life and what the world was. And you're just the beneficiary of that. But you're not innately intelligent. You're not innately a superior animal, and if you were left without that knowledge base, you would be a bit of a gorilla. So anyway, this is sort of important, because this is what human beings get fixated and start thinking they are the center of the universe because they have this knowledge base, and that's all it is. It's just knowledge. It's just understanding. And it doesn't mean we're more conscious. It doesn't mean we feel more. It doesn't mean that we are more important, more vital, that our mission is any more. Our mission really, because we acquired a knowledge base, does not mean our purpose or our design was functionally doing anything more than what our ancestors were doing, which was just surviving, consuming, and reproducing. They were doing what the biology demanded, and it's not a sophisticated plan. It's kind of a stupid plan, invented accidentally by a cell that was given a capacity it didn't even ask for. It just happened that way. And so that's all this is, though. It's consumption and reproduction, and it just perpetuates itself into the future, and we play this survival of the most capable of surviving. Let's not even use the word fittest, because it might not have anything to do with any rational definition of fitness. It just has to do with that biological definition, that natural definition, which is, yeah, if you win, you're the winner. It doesn't get any farther than that. It doesn't matter how much you cheat. It doesn't matter what tactics you use. None of that stuff makes any difference. The only thing that matters to nature is that you won the competition. And it's not necessarily a competition of elegance and grace and dignity and any rational definition of superiority. It's just a competition for survival. And so that's the sad, pitiful truth. I'll keep this shorter. I don't want to have to compress the video too much. So really, that's volume 3. We have a lousy origin. Okay, we have a bastard origin. And we have to deal with that reality, and we're stuck in this maze of life, and it's not an elaborate maze. It's ugly and crude. And if we keep thinking we're accomplishing something, without feeling obliged to prove we are, we're making a really big mistake.